Hey, what's up, everybody? Chad Calek here, and welcome back to the In the Credit Room podcast for episode number 98, in which I am going to be answering all of your questions about my current sickness with the coronavirus. And I will bring you guys up to speed as to where I left off on my social media page. I've been kind of chronicling this sickness on Facebook, and then I will answer a bunch of questions here that I've gotten online that I wrote down, and hopefully this will kind of bring some clarity to this situation, at least for what I'm dealing with. I might be somewhat slow going in some of these answers. The breathing issues hit me later than most people, but let me start out by saying that I am okay. So, and after that, if I'm feeling up to it, we will get to questions about Phantom Rider. So this is very much a Q&A episode, just because there's been so much going on since I took a break away from the podcast, and I came right back into it in the middle of all this coronavirus madness. But Phantom Rider is out there doing very well, and you guys have tons of questions about Phantom Rider, which I knew you would. And it was very much intentionally edited so that you would have questions. And I'll kind of explain why later as well. But as far as the coronavirus goes, like many of you, I was feeling fine at the beginning of the month. I know, it didn't seem like when I asked online that many of you had been infected by it or had any interaction yet with COVID-19, which I pray that remains the case. I tracked this back. I started feeling bad and had a mild fever for probably 4 or 5 days, way back around the 11th or the 12th, because as we approached the release date for Phantom Rider, I started feeling worse and worse. Just so you guys know, as I mentioned in the last podcast as well, this all also happened in the middle of a dental procedure where I have an implant and I was supposed to get a crown. They have the crown down at the dental office, but the dental office is not open right now. So I have this on my front right tooth. I don't have this crown for this work that was done. So if my S's sound a little weird, that's why. Okay, so yeah, back to about the 10th or the 11th, I started feeling a mild fever, and nothing that was even 100 degrees. I mean, I took my fever a couple times, and it was just below 100. But it was just kind of sluggish. You just feel kind of hot, but not hot enough for you to break a sweat, and a little achy, but not even enough where I would take any kind of Tylenol or anything like that. And just so you guys know, I'm a firm believer in putting next to nothing in your body when sicknesses occur. I think your body and your immune system, the more you make it fight on its own, the stronger your immune system gets. And this is not just, something I conjured up. There's a lot of natural medicine and plant medicine based people that believe this. I'm a firm believer of this. So as this was going on, I wasn't taking Tylenol or Advil or ibuprofen or anything like that. I just figured, honestly, I figured it was stress induced. Whenever I get ready to release a film, I am a ball of stress. I don't sleep much. And if you guys know from watching Phantom Rider, we've just been getting, we mean Laura and I, Craig, his family, we've been getting fucked with so hard. And it was just a very stressful time. So I thought, I'm just not feeling good right now because of stress. And as soon as I release the film, I'm going to feel much better. The film came out on the 14th. I had picture lock on the film, and the only thing I had left were the credits to do. And I didn't want to make anybody wait another week to finish up the credits because I also want to go through the credits several times because there's been donations and things like that. So I was like, you know what, I don't want to rush the credits at all. So I'm just going to get the picture lock out so people could see the movie, and then I'll be okay. The day after the film was released, going into that Monday, I think it was Monday was the 16th. That was the day when I really started noticing something was wrong. I've always had this thing. Laura knows what I'm talking about. You guys might know what I'm talking about. Whenever I'm fixing or about ready to get sick, I always feel like my eyes get hot. Like, that's a hard way to explain it, but like behind my eyes, I just feel heat around my eyes. And on the 16th, I had said to Laura, man, I hope this isn't anything, that everybody's worried about right now, because I'm just kind of feeling this heat around my eyes. And she said, okay, well, let me feel your head. And she said, well, your head feels a little warm, but it has for a couple days. Are you sure anything's worse? And I said, well, I just feel, I'm more achy. My chest was a little tight at that point. But I'm still thinking to myself, this could just be common cold. Still could be stress. But I'm noticing, it's getting worse. The following day comes, it starts to really get worse. The following day comes. After that, temperature is hovering up around 102, constant. And what's really weird about it, it's not in my face. It's not in my forehead. I mean, my face and forehead are hot and they're a little warmer than usual. But my body, specifically my chest, stomach, legs, my core basically is burning up, because Laura put her hand on my head and I was like, I feel my chest, and she puts her hand on my chest and she's like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah, this is pretty fucked up. But at that point, I wasn't really, struggling with breathing. It was a little tight, but it wasn't that bad. It really wasn't that bad. This kind of fluctuation from 102, 103 temperature-wise, went on and on until I believe it was last Monday or Tuesday. And that's, about the time I started writing on Facebook and telling you guys what was going on. And finally, oh my God, it was I don't know if it was just a delayed punch or what it was. But yeah, I had a brutal afternoon where the temperature just jacked way up to literally over 104 degrees. And my body was burning. But what the weird thing was is I was freezing. I can feel that's the weird thing about this virus. On the inside, you can feel the heat on the inside of your body. But on the outside of your body, you're freezing. So it feels like your body's just at war with itself. And yeah, I felt terrible for a good 2 or 3 hours. I mean, you feel, there's feeling bad, and there's you're starting to get scared. Holy shit, I'm really in a bad place right now. And what was scary about it is it felt, if I can describe it in words, I would say it felt like my body didn't know what to do. It was so hot. The temperature was so hot on my core, but it was freezing on the outside. So I was having these shivers. I've never had chills so bad where they felt like seizures. But these chills would hit me so bad, my whole bottom jaw would just be clacking like crazy. My whole body's just shaking and shimmering, and you're having just it's the best way to describe it. It almost seems seizure-like. And the next thing I know, I wake up on the couch and I am just in a pool of sweat. And when I say a pool of sweat, I mean, at the time, because I was so cold on the outside, despite having a hot temperature, which I think the reason I had the chill so hard is because my body was so hot that everything seemed cold to me, if that makes sense. But anyways, I wake up and Laura's just looking at me and she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, what is going on? And I look, and my jacket, 2 shirts, I had this blanket on, my jeans. I mean, it's like someone just literally poured a bucket of water all over me. Couch is soaked through, completely wet. And I'm like, what happened? Because I didn't remember anything. It was a good probably half hour, 40 minutes had gone by. And she said, you don't remember? And I'm like, no. And she was like, you were fighting with me. And I'm like, about what? And she goes, I was trying to get you to take your coat off and your shoes off and to lay down. And you didn't want to. You just kept, saying you were okay. She's like, but then you started talking about weird shit with work and you weren't making any sense. And I have very little memory of any of that whatsoever. But I do believe that was just due to the high temperature. I know that or I've read that when you get above 104 degrees, that you'll start experiencing confusion or hallucinations or, I don't remember hallucinating anything, but Laura said it was like word salad. It was like I just was not making sense to the things that I was saying. And I was like, whew, okay. Well, my temperature had dropped down to around, it went from like 104, right, hovering right above between 100 and 101 again at that moment. And I was like, oh my God. So yeah, I ended up calling, I forgot this part too. During the midst of all this, I ended up calling and talking to the Kaiser Permanentes, who my health insurance is through, and they have a number you can call and talk to a doctor or a nurse practitioner. And when I called them, I went through all the symptoms, and at the end of it, she basically just said, "Do you feel as though, you are in danger of losing your life, from this illness?" And I'm like, well, no, I don't feel like I'm going to die if that's what you're asking me. I'm just very sick. And she's like, okay. And she went through all of it. And she was like, I'm pretty certain that this is what, you have COVID, 19 or the coronavirus. And she was like, if we tested you down here, I can tell you that we need the test for the elderly. We need the test for the very young. And we don't have enough tests as it is right now, not even close. She said there's a 7-hour wait at the ER to be seen. And, what we'll probably tell you is that you're positive and to go home and to rest up. And if you get really, really sick and you think you're going to die, then you got to come back. Basically, we don't have enough resources around here. And we have, cases down here where people are dying. And if it's on that scale, come down. If not, fight through it. Pretty much. That's what it had come to. And I said, well, I want to be sure that I have, COVID-19. And she said, okay, well, I mean, you would, may be a very good judge of that because, when you have a new virus, you have familiarity with past viruses. And does this feel different? I'm like, well, this feels completely different than anything that I've ever had. At that point, the one thing that she mentioned that I had not experienced yet was the loss of taste and smell. Things smelled a little differently to me at that time, but that was more. I think when you're sick, everything kind of smells and tastes different. So I just said to her, I said, okay, well, look, I'll monitor. Because the biggest thing was breathing. She was like, are you having a hard time breathing? Because you don't want to mess around with that. If you can't get a breath in, you need to get down here. And I'm like, well, no, my chest is tight, but I'm okay. I'm not, sitting around going, trying to get air or anything. So I just told her I would, keep a close eye on it, watch everything. And then that was before, I had this 104 degree bout with this stuff. So Laura and I both agreed after that, though. When I woke up and I was drenched in sweat and all that stuff, I said, well, listen, that was scary. 104 degree temperature isn't good. If anything like this happens again, then we're going to go in. I just don't want to fuck around with this and wind up, dead or something, And so I said, let's just monitor this and see what happens. And it steadily started getting better. Like as far as energy goes, my body aches were way less. My energy was way more. Chest congestion was about the same. The fever was just hovering right around between 105, or 101.5 and 2, like right in that area. Following day comes, and that's when the loss of taste, loss of smell, complete. It was the weirdest thing ever. Like, it doesn't matter what you eat. Like, I ate a pickle. I did a shot of Tabasco sauce. I ate a cookie. just to see, like, and it all just tastes like substance. I mean, just there's no taste to it whatsoever. Nothing smelt at all. Laura had made a bowl of chili, or a pan full of chili. I like to eat chili when I'm sick because it's just pure protein. And usually you could smell that because I like it really high. Yeah, I couldn't smell anything. Um, that was weird. Um, but then, uh, oh, by the way, the chest, for a second, I thought I was out of the woods with it because the day after the big fever, it really felt pretty good. The following night, I remember saying, man, this feels pretty good. Not that bad. Fever was kind of going down again. Body aches were almost gone. Um, and then I woke up the following day and I had like the worst headache ever. I was just like, oh my God, what? And it was right at above the back of my neck, kind of like in the bowl of your skull, like in the back of it. And it just didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter what I drank. It didn't matter. I finally broke down and took Tylenol for it. Didn't matter. Like it was with me all day long. As the chest started getting worse. And I was like, oh man, I hope this is, this cannot, I don't want to be, gasping for air. Um, I woke up about 3 a.m. I had what I would call an asthma attack. I was just coughing up this phlegm and this mucus, and my chest didn't feel as tight in the sense that it felt like stuff was breaking up inside of it. Not to be gross, but yeah, you could just spit some of that crap out. But I know I haven't had an asthma attack in years. But the thing about asthma, when you have an asthma attack, your mouth gets really, really watery with everything that is coming up out of your lungs. And that went on for a couple hours. I finally fell asleep again. And but the sleeping, by the way, is intermittent. It seemed like every 3 or 4 hours I'd fall asleep for like a couple hours, and that's it. And this was kind of a round the clock thing. And then about, the day before yesterday, woke up. It felt a lot better. Late last night, felt really good. And then I woke up this morning, and it felt like I have really turned a corner with this. The chest is still a little tight. Breathing is still a little affected. But it's not horrible at all. I have no body aches, which is awesome. I can taste food again. Not like it was, but I can definitely taste food again. Headaches are gone. And the fever today was like literally just above 99. So 98.6 is normal. So it's like 99.5. So it's almost gone. So I feel like today I totally turned a corner with all this stuff. And I do, in fact, believe that I am over the worst of it and on my way to feeling okay. So I think I lucked out. But what I do want to say to everybody is, my situation is my situation. I can clearly see how this virus could affect different people with different pre-existing conditions and ages and all that thing. But like any virus does. For one, you'll know this if you get it. It feels completely unique of anything that I've ever had before. I mean, completely. Your body just feels like I said, like it feels like it's at war with itself. It doesn't really know what to do. But also be calm, be cool. That was my thing the whole time I just kept telling myself this whole thing is going to get dramatically worse if I start freaking out about dying. And thankfully I had Laura here to help me. We can talk about her situation right now shortly, of what's going on with her right now. But she was here. She was amazing. She didn't freak out. She, was just observant the whole time and, got me whatever I needed. So, while these things can be scary, they're also very manageable in the sense that I personally never felt like I was going to die at any point. Those 2 hours where, the temperature was above like 104. That was scary, but I've had I got the H1N1, the swine flu, back in 2010. Guys, let me tell you, I will never forget that. I mean, that was like 7 straight days there were some real moments where I thought I was going to die. I mean, I'm not kidding. That was the worst flu I have ever in my life experienced. Never again, I pray to God that never again will I experience something like the swine flu. That was horrific. This was rough, but nothing that I would, consider earth-shattering. Now, again, I'm not 80 years old. I don't have a pre-existing condition, nor am I, super young and have an untested, system. So it's just, take everything I say with a grain of salt. I'm 43, male. I smoke. I don't drink. Don't do drugs. I don't have any other adverse, lifestyle choices. I don't have any pre-existing conditions that I know of. So that's kind of my situation. But having said that, I wanted to answer your guys' questions here. I've seen quite a few of them. And because a lot of these are repetitive, I just kind of grabbed the ones that were asked the most. And when we get to Phantom Rider here in a second, I'll individually, name the person who asked the question. But most of these questions about COVID-19, like I said, they're very repetitive. So question number 1 is, how am I feeling? I would say on a scale of, 100%, I'm probably 75%, 80%, I've, 100% being feeling amazing. Yeah, probably 75, 80%. Like I said, the worst day was 3 or 4 days ago, and that was pretty bad, but yeah, not horrible, not quite back to perfect yet. So yeah, that's about where I'm at. What am I doing to manage my symptoms? As I said earlier, I'm not a believer in using anything if you don't have to. And with the virus, there's not much you can do as far as, combating the virus itself. But the effects, the only thing I took the entire time was Tylenol. I take that back. The first couple of days I did take ibuprofen. I know everybody says, "Oh, that's terrible for you, and it'll make it worse." I didn't experience that. It just wasn't effective. Ibuprofen just wasn't really that effective for what I was feeling. So I took Tylenol a couple times. I drank a ton of water throughout this whole thing. Whenever I could drink water, I was pounding water. Outside of that, I did not take any other type of medication. At all, because I just believe that your immune system has to fight. It has to fight it, and it has to be strong. And I've kind of carried that belief my whole life. And I do believe I have a pretty strong immune system. Here's a good question. Where did I get the virus? I've thought about this, and I've dated it back to a week before I first had symptoms. And I actually think I got it at my bank, and I'll tell you why. Well, first of all, you have to kind of understand the area that I live in. This is like Touristville, USA. I live right on Ocean Avenue, which my front yard's the beach. My neighbors are like Julia Roberts, Johnny Knoxville. Like, it's just that one of those neighborhoods with a lot of Hollywood people. So we get a lot of tourists that are looking for those people, that are looking to see them. I'm also a straight shot, less than 5 miles from LAX. And Santa Monica is just a tourist hub, period. Like, 3/4 of my building is Airbnb'd most of the year. And a lot of times it's young people from Europe that are, well-to-do kids that are just looking for a beach pad to party and hang out in an area with, famous Hollywood people. How did I get into this area? Well, my wife's connected. Laura actually was a teacher of the owner of this town unit that we're in, and just an opportunity came up. It's who knows who, that type of thing. But this area is just riddled with tourism. I say riddled like it's a bad thing. It's not. Tourism's a great thing. But what that means is a lot of people in my neighborhood are in fact sick. But there'd be 2 places that I could have got it. It would have been the corner store, which I go to at least once or twice a day, and that's the corner store hub for all the hotels around here, the local neighborhood, all that stuff. I'm like a block away from Lowe's and Shadows and these, businesswoman travel destination hotels. Disney's Seascape Business Hotel is like 400 yards from me. Santa Monica Pier is less than half a mile from me. The Venice Boardwalk starts, literally a block and a half from me. So I'm just there. I'm in that hub. But I do remember going to the bank, and there was a girl in front of me that was smaller, really, really tiny girl. And I remember it was kind of warm, and she was wrapped up, and she was coughing like a mother. And I remember it because I was texting while I was waiting in line for her to use the ATM, and I heard her coughing enough to kind of break my concentration on the text. And I said to her, I said, "You okay?" And she didn't say anything back. So I didn't say anything. And I just wasn't thinking at the time. My head was on business, and I used the ATM right after she did. My best guess is I probably touched something that I shouldn't have right then. Or it could have simply been from a normal visit to the corner store to get milk or bread or anything like that, because those are the two regular spots that I go to. But I had a bunch of meetings, though, all over the place that week, too, that week of the 7th through like the 11th. So I was in the Valley, I was downtown Hollywood, so, it could have been from anywhere. LA, like New York, is just a big travel hub. So, but my best guess, I believe it was probably the bank. What day am I? Well, let's see. If I go back and say it was the 11th, so it would have been the 4th. I'm about day 16 or 17. So I'm about at the end of it. And that's kind of what it feels like for me right now. I think that's probably pretty accurate. I answered this earlier. Is it scary? You're worried you would die? I was not worried that I would die. I was not scared. I was uncomfortable. I don't know. I have beliefs about death, too. I just think that, death is like love. You can't predict when you're going to run into it. You can't predict when it's going to happen for you. You're going to die when you die, and you're going to find that right person when you find them. I think they're both closely kind of married. So I wasn't scared that I was going to die. I don't want to do anything stupid and die either. I don't want to like I said, there's a reason why I called in and talked to the nurse. I don't, God gave me, common sense, so I don't want to do anything stupid, but I wasn't afraid of dying. Is Laura okay? Laura is starting to feel a couple minor symptoms, and we're hoping that it's not going to be this, but she's been here with me the whole time, so it's kind of inevitable. And I think she knows that. But this just started actually this morning with her. So she's starting to get starting to feel a little feverish. And we're just watching it right now. Do you think this is a virus or a bioweapon? Well, they're one and the same, right? The fact that this thing is this contagious makes me obviously wonder where it came from. It makes me wonder. That's probably a whole other podcast to get into. Which I talked a little bit about it in the last one as well. I question a lot about this, guys. There's so much about this that we're not being told, and it's obvious. The mismanagement of this entire crisis is unbelievable. The incompetence that's going on is unbelievable. This very much seems like an attack, and I think Trump knows that. I think he's trying to let people know. He called it an attack yesterday. And he has more inside information now than we do, but it certainly feels that way. It feels like it was something that was engineered. Do I think the current response is warranted? Look, that's a tough one. Ultimately, there might not be a popular opinion for me to say this. Do I think that we should be going to this extreme right now to deal with the virus? Well, I think what we're kind of seeing right now through New York, I mean, New York is something like 60,000 cases in New York, and they're going to find out that it's way, 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 way worse than that. I kind of feel like how I felt when I first heard that, the governor of California said, yeah, we've done our estimates and we believe 25.5 million people in California will get the coronavirus. Therefore, practice social distancing. My response to that was 25.5 million out of 40. That's a loss, man. That's an L. So why are we doing social distancing? At that point, when over half the population is going to get it, they're going to get it, and I think taking initial steps to lock things down for a little bit and kind of figure out, like, what are those numbers? Like, what are we looking at here? What is the worst case scenario? And I think once you kind of know what the potential of the worst case scenario is, then I think it comes back to like anything else, man. America is a land of choices. We are free here. Okay? If we decide that we want, our standard of life to be hiding in our homes for months and months on end, if you want to do that, fine. But if you're someone that says, you know what, if I gotta, spend months and 6 months of my life hiding in my home, then I have no life. I mean, this is not. I would rather take on the flu and take my 97% chance that I'll live. I'd rather go deal with that. Then I think that's your choice as well too. We've never been here before, so maybe my answer or thoughts are wrong, and maybe someone else's are right. I think that what's going to be really, really hard, and what will make losing someone even harder, is if you lose your mother, sister, brother, daughter, aunt, uncle, anybody that you love, and then on top of that, you can't, you don't know where your next meal's coming from. I think that makes things real hard. And I think this $1,200 check is a joke. I think it's not even going to get to the people that it needs to get to. I don't think it's going to cover what they think it's going to cover. And I think that the risk of social and civil unrest is going to become a reality in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I really do. I think the worst of this thing is yet to come. And, you tell people to stay inside their homes and don't leave. They have another name for that, guys. It's called jail. And, we are not animals that were meant to be quarantined. So time will tell if the response was wrong or right. Right now, I feel like the government's response to the entire thing has been wrong. So that's just my honest opinion. So, okay, so that kind of wraps it up for the COVID-19. It's not the worst flu I've ever had. I am not saying that to try to downplay anything. I can clearly see how this is something that could cause a lot of problems for the elderly specifically. Anybody that has a breathing condition. Once again, I want to stress that I'm just telling you my feelings and what I've experienced going through this. It's not been fun. I definitely want it to be over with. I mean, it's a tough bug. It is, for sure. But I don't panic. If you guys listening out there, if you get it, don't panic. Just take it day by day. And, the stats are what they are. 97% of people get through it. And that's not disregarding the 3% that don't, because there's no such thing as a life that doesn't matter, an expendable life, and I hate when people act that way. I can't remember her name. That actress was recently, what was the last name, Bergen or something. She was like, yeah, old people are going to die, but, is it inevitable? Just kind of like brushing it off that old people die. It's like when that old person's your mom or your grandma or somebody who's taken care of you your whole life, and you envisioned a way that they would pass, and suddenly you have to accept that they're going to pass in this vile, horrific way. That shit matters. So, it's not okay to just brush those people off as expendable, because one day we're all going to be that age, and we're not going to want to go out that way. So, at the same time, again, I just think that we all need to make a decision here how we want to live our lives. Are we all okay with staying inside for months and months on end? Or do we want, to just say, hey, I'm not going to live this way. I'm going to go out and live my life? That's going to be the ultimate question. So anyways, moving on, guys. If you have any more questions about anything that I've dealt with this, let me know in the comments. I want to move on to talk about other topics. That doesn't mean that I won't talk about this pandemic anymore, but I've given it enough time, I think, on here. I've talked about it a couple times, and it's an unprecedented moment in history, and it definitely deserves the time. But there's other things also going on in the world, and I want to talk about those things as well. And one of those things is that I released a movie called Phantom Rider, which, as you know, is the third part of the SIR NOFACE docuseries. Now, if you haven't seen Phantom Rider, I do want to say that this will very much be a spoiler to hear me answer a lot of these questions. But because I want to reward you as my listeners to this podcast, if you haven't seen the film, only you will know this if you've listened thus far into the podcast. If you scroll down to the bottom, the very bottom of the description box, you will see a link that simply says click here. If you click on that link, you will be able to purchase SIR NOFACE, Two-Face the Gray, and Phantom Rider, all three films for $13.99, which is the lowest that I have offered anywhere. $13.99. I'm not going to advertise this. I'm not going to announce this on my Facebook page. Only you know this as my listener, which you can take advantage of this link down below. When you click on it, a PayPal window will come up. You will see that it is all three films for $13.99, which you will immediately receive an email with the links and your passwords to watch all three films. Having said that, let's get into the questions about Phantom Rider. Ben Jones from Billings, Montana asked, do you think the coronavirus response has anything to do with the fake alien invasion? It's funny that I do. I do in the sense that it could be in the sense that if we had an alien invasion coming, it would look just like this. It would be a bunch of countries saying nameless, faceless, evil that could kill us is on its way, and we got to come together now. We got to push all of our differences apart and come together as mankind. And in fact, on the last podcast, I showed a video of Freeway Ricky Ross saying that exact same thing. Rogan has said it a few times. This is a time where we set aside our differences and we come together as a planet. This could very much be a test for that. Just to see, what will we accept? What will we accept? I mean, Trump today was talking about using the military to quarantine, New York and New Jersey and parts of Connecticut. And I've said this before, that's not going to happen because, and Governor Cuomo said it, the day that happens, then New York is Wuhan and we are communist China, and that's martial law. And this is not a country where that can go on. People will absolutely take to the streets with their guns. It's just you can't do that. You can't take away people's rights to make the decision if they want to leave their home or not. But they could very well be testing, by throwing stuff out there and saying, what is the response? What will these people do? We still don't know. We don't have a cure for coronavirus. We still don't know for sure where it came from. We don't know when any of this quarantine shit is going to end. We don't know any of it. We don't know any of it. And by and large, the public is doing exactly what they're told. So keep that in mind. It could be a test for something like that. It feels like a test. Now, I don't know that. There's nothing, to say that is the truth. I have emailed Skyfall and asked him his thoughts. I have not heard back from Skyfall at all, which is frustrating. But I don't know that for sure. It could or couldn't be. But this is what it would look like. This is exactly what it would look like. Lynn Marta from Perth, Australia asks, when you were shot at, how close did the bullets come? You know what? They came close enough that I heard them whistling. Like, I didn't. Now, again, I don't have a lot of exposure with guns, guys. I've maybe been to a range. I went to a range once with Justin years ago. It was on video, and I shot like a 50 cal, and I shot a machine gun, an AK-47. But I don't have a lot of experience with guns or weapons or bullets. I had no idea that you can hear the whistling of the bullets going by you. The first bullet that was shot, I heard it. I mean, now I don't know if you're, are familiar with guns. Maybe you know how close a bullet has to be for you to hear it whistling. But I heard just the wind of it go by. If you haven't seen the film right now, you're probably going, "What the fuck are you talking about?" You'll see it was a very bizarre incident. It was well documented by the media and the press, and I was right in the middle of it. But yes, the bullets came close enough where I could hear them whistling. So I assume, I don't know, is that 3 feet, 10 feet? I don't know. But it was pointed right at me when I hit the ground. So I don't know. And the second shot, I think he probably hit the car, because I do remember hearing the second bullet fire, and it hit something right after. So it could have been the car that was right in front of me. I don't know. But that was a terrifying moment. A terrifying moment. So, Dyson Faylor from, by the way, beautiful name. I love picking out really interesting names. Dyson Faylor. Isn't that a beautiful name? Dyson Faylor from Copenhagen, Denmark. Dyson, I've seen you a few times on here from Copenhagen, and I know you've bought all of my films on Vimeo as well, so thank you, Dyson. Wants to know, am I going to meet Skyfall in Townsville? And does that mean he is the two-faced man? Yes, I am going to go to Australia. I am going to take up his offer. As obvious as it seems to draw that connection to say he's the two-faced man, I'm sorry, to say that Skyfall is the tattooed-faced man, there's something in me that tells me no, that's not the case. I think he's going there for a reason, and I think maybe he's going to introduce me to the tattoo-faced man. But he may be. Skyfall may be the tattooed-faced man. But I've asked him before, because I know the tattooed-faced man's real name. And I asked Skyfall if he knew him. And he said yes. But you don't need to meet with him again right now. This was, probably a year ago. So either he's going there to introduce me to him, or he could be him. Or there could just be something in Townsville in general that he wants me to see. But that's what the message says. There's something I have to show you. So I'm anxious to go there, but also very nervous. Just because you guys have seen in the film what's been going down. And at what point do you just kind of check out and say, hey, I don't need to get any further down this rabbit hole. But, I don't know how I don't go there to see what he's talking about. I don't know. There's always a part of me that thinks that I'm going to wake up any day and find out that Skyfall is just some fan, just some crazy hacker kid that is a genius and he's just fucking with me. And man, in a weird way, I would be so happy if that was the case. I would just not. That would be actually a massive amount of relief. Unfortunately, I don't think that's the case at all. So, but yeah, I am going to go there, and I don't know that necessarily means that Skyfall is the tattooed-faced man, but he could be. John Timmons from Fort Wayne, Indiana says, do you think Skyfall, sorry, I'm not completely there yet, guys. I feel like everything's moving slower right now for me. Anyways, John Timmons asks, from Fort Wayne, Indiana, asked, do I think Skyfall works for the U.S. or Australian government? I'm certain he works for neither anymore. I don't think he ever worked for the U.S. government proper. I think he worked for one of those dark intelligence agencies, like he says. But what's not in the film, but it is in a trailer that I alluded to, because I'm going to get into it heavier in the next film, which I believe will be the final one, Paleface, is that Craig actually received an Freedom of Information request asking him for all of his communications between the Australian government and him. And it didn't come from the U.S. government. It didn't come from the Australian government, because they have to serve up their information too. So what we know for a fact is that there's a third party. That's not the U.S. government, and it's not the Australian government. There is a third party that wants every bit of the communication between Craig and the government. And my guess is they're searching for what Craig has hidden on that 100 hours of footage that he has made copies of, and he has it in certain locations, so nobody could actually get to it and confiscate it. And we'll get into that more in Paleface. But there's a lot of things that were in. There were a lot of things that were in Phantom Rider that initially were in that I ended up pulling back because I just needed more information. I don't like presenting things unless there's at least enough information to form a possibility of a direction. I don't want to just give something that just stumps people. And I think we need to do some more work on that still. So I'm holding off on that. But what I can tell you is that I don't think Skyfall works for either. I don't think he works for the proper U.S. government or the proper Australian government. I think he worked for what he said, a black ops intelligence company or a black intelligence agency. And his job was to push a narrative. And he's not doing that anymore. So, Karina Worth from Bergen, Norway asked, do you think I keep saying Skywall. Do you think Skyfall is a part of DeLong's team? I do not, because Tom DeLong's team, I think is, honestly, guys, my honest opinion, I think Tom DeLong's team is the mouthpiece for the government on this subject. They're nothing but military, big military and big energy, from Skunk Works to the CIA, the DOD, like every scary 3-letter U.S. intelligence agency. They're all surrounding DeLong. And when they did their big, To the Stars press conference, their goal of the whole thing, they said at the very end, the reason for them all coming together, they said, was to build this time-traveling spaceship. So I can tell you right now, Skyfall is way humanitarian. He's very humanitarian and very concerned with the planet. And DeLong's circle is not in any capacity. In fact, I've never asked him, but I would assume that Skyfall would be fairly disgusted by DeLong's team, based on what he said to me. And I think DeLong just doesn't realize. I think DeLong is that useful idiot, and that's a phrase I'm using. I don't think he's an idiot at all, but there's that old phrase, he's a useful idiot, meaning that DeLong wants so badly to be in the big circles of this UFO community that he's not looking at the facts. He's not looking at the facts that you didn't recruit all these people to come work for you. All these people were ordered to simultaneously come work for you, which means essentially they recruited you. They recruited you to deliver scary messages to the public because you're Tom DeLong, And if you look at whether it be Trump, DeLong, Tom Cruise coming out in Top Gun, all the messages about Space Force and the UFO narrative, they're all being delivered to the public by entertainers. And there's a reason for that. They entertain us. They don't scare us. That's why. So I don't think at all that Skyfall, works with DeLong's group. Greg Winter from Austin, Texas. Isn't there a Greg Winter? Isn't there a rock and roll guy named Greg Winter? Maybe I'm wrong here. From Austin, Texas, wants to know if I've ever considered that Skyfall is actually a black hat rather than a white hat. If you don't know, black hat, white hat, those are hacker terms. Bad guy hackers are black hats. Good guy hackers are white hats. I have considered since day one, and every single day of my life since, I have absolutely considered that Skyfall could be a black hat. I'm very nervous about every piece of information that he gives me. I cross-check everything I can, research everything I can to the highest degree. There's a lot of stuff he tells me that I don't share with you guys just because I think it's more his opinion than it is anything he could back up. I'm very nervous as if he's trying to use me to push a narrative. That's probably my biggest fear with him, is that, he turns me into his mouthpiece so he's safe. I can say whatever he wants because then he'll be safe. And that's why I'm always trying to put distance between his thoughts and mine and make sure that I identify what he is saying. But that's a great question. So, and last but not least, Sarah Henderson from Crete, Nebraska says, how do you deal with skeptics that don't believe you? I've been trying to get a few members of my family to watch SIR NOFACE, Two-Face, and Phantom Rider, and they immediately discredit me. Does that ever happen to you? And again, how do you deal with this? What should I do? Well, I mean, no one really in my, family. I don't really go to my family and try to get them to watch my movies, I guess. But there's always going to be skeptics in the world, and it's been so long since I cared about what a skeptic thought, because I've always felt like I make my movies for the people that are ready to absorb them. There are a lot of people in the world that's just simply not ready to realize that there is magic in this world that we can't explain and we can't understand. That there are, an infinite amount of information throughout the galaxy and the universe that we don't understand. And when I look back like 100 years ago, if you look where science was, today they look back 100 years ago and they laugh and go, man, they had that wrong. Right now we think we're geniuses. But in 100 years from now, we're going to look back and go, Jesus, we were such idiots back then, So I don't make films with the thought of who will believe or who won't. It's not in my thought process. I'm simply sharing what occurs. And I think that's why you and people like you keep watching, because I think you guys know that. I think you know that I'm not interested in making you a believer of anything. I'm interested in telling the stories that need to be told and providing a window to a world and showing the bizarre nature of this universe that we live in and the real magic that exists, beneath this sky and above it, man. I mean, there's so many things in the world that we don't know. We don't know. And to act like we do is ignorant, So if somebody doesn't want to watch something, then don't push them to. It's not their time yet. They're not at a place where they want to know more, And when they do, that's the beautiful thing about documentaries, is that they're there forever, They're there forever. I still get messages, right now. I got a message 2 days ago about somebody who had finally watched American Ghost Hunter, and it was just how much it meant to him. And I'm like, wow, that was like a decade ago almost I made that film. So it's out there for everyone. And I'm just glad that you enjoy them. And I hope you keep watching them. And that goes out to all of you. To everybody with your thoughts and your questions, thank you. With your comments and concerns and your love and your support, with my health through all this COVID stuff. Also your support with Phantom Rider. That was a monster of a film to battle through. All of it. Thank you guys. I know that we're all going through a weird time right now. A weird time. A weird time. But just, remember that the biggest person that influences our day on a daily basis is us. We each have the greatest influence of our day, of what's going to happen. So happiness is a choice. What I'm trying to get at is that it's my choice to sit and watch stuff all day on the TV about the coronavirus, or whether I just want to go, fuck this, and take my dog for a walk at the beach. I mean, that's what I mean. So take care of the ones you love. Be safe. Obviously, make good decisions. But we're going to be through all this very soon. And I love you guys. And thank you so much for supporting me. I hope you watch all three of the films, SIR NOFACE, Two-Face, and Phantom Rider. I hope the deal for all three for $13.99. I hope that the discount helps people see all three if they haven't. And in the meantime, much love, guys. All the best. And I'll be back as soon as I can with the next podcast. I'll try to do another one tomorrow. Much love and all the best. Take care.